where ASRA network members get together in conversation to explore the dynamics, disruptions, and discoveries shaping our world. ASRA is an independent initiative, home to 90-plus network members, that aims to mainstream systemic risk assessment in policy and decision-making in response to current and future challenges. This series is entirely member-driven. Network members identify the pressing issues in systemic risk and connect with colleagues to explore them more deeply in conversation. The views you hear are those of our participants and don't necessarily reflect ASRA's institutional positions. I am David Jácome Polit, head of the Resilient Development Program at ICLEI, and I'm excited to be here today with Ayan Mahamoud, Senior Program Coordinator at the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Today we are going to talk about systems change and paradigms shift, but also we are going to be discussing power dynamics that we need to consider, and together with those, how do we understand that through different scales, so that we can help steer cities and other different levels or subnational governmental levels towards resilience, but more importantly towards a better future, more just, fair, equitable, and sustainable. So let's dive in. Maybe Ayan, do you want to start with saying hi?
Hi, David. It's such a pleasure to be on this podcast with you. How's your day?
The pleasure is completely mine. Um, and we had a conversation previously about what we want to discuss and the topics that we want to bring in here. But I was thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation, and why are we bringing these topics? And then it got me kind of like reflecting. We see out there so many interesting initiatives, good projects, and people really inspiring people doing great things. But it's kind of like we are still not going in the right direction. Sometimes these solutions are techno fixes, and they do not go beyond solving one specific issue, um, and really not helping us steer that. So um, that's kind of like the initial reflection, and I wanted to ask you, how do we go from techno fixes, merely techno fixes, to really steering systems?
Wow, that's a lot to reflect on. You see, it's a hard balance to strike. Like, it's not that we don't need techno fixes. We still need that technical expert view on questions, and on problems, on challenges, and etc. But yes, I mean, it's a delicate balance, in the sense that you'd have to also consider the views of the beneficiaries, those who are affected the most by the problem. If the challenges were there before, and if they're kind of recurrent, it's kind of they must have found a way of dealing with it. So what we call indigenous knowledge, for example. So it is really a delicate balance, trying to take into consideration the views of the beneficiaries and the locals, while bringing in the science, the technical expert, like, those of us who go get big degrees and says, okay, well, this is how we should do in our expert opinion, but still, So yeah.
And I think you are putting on the table a very critical point, which is, um, if we bring diverse perspectives, we might also find that the goals and the paradigms that we are currently using can be modified, or should be, or must be modified. Um, and so bringing indigenous people views, or um, those of activists, or feminists perspectives, that might open our perspectives, and also enable us to come up with more more different and suitable solutions, so that we do not only tackle the problems that we are trying to solve with technical solutions, which are very much needed. I agree with you, but also these other underlying problems and issues that are structural ones and that are kind of like hindering our capacities to steer systems.
Absolutely, absolutely. It kind of brings to mind a conversation we had some time back on how to define a system and what are the different levels, what are the different places you can intervene in a system. If you consider a city as a system, for where would you think, for example, we could effectively intervene?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question. So what theory says is that you have different levels or different levers with different capacities to steer a system, right? And I'm going to give you a quick example, something that comes from my practice back in Quito, but also something that I have been researching on. So I've been reflecting on the work that we did back then in that city, my home city, around urban farming. And it's really interesting because we were able to change feedbacks and stocks. We were able to support local communities, really vulnerable communities, mainly women, to produce food for themselves, to have their own economy in a society that is very machista, therefore giving these women economic independence. And so we were changing in that level the system in a very beneficial way for these groups. But going beyond urban farming towards having the ambition of changing the trajectory of a city that is really not going in the right direction requires having other actors involved, meaning a right governance system to support these efforts. But also, again, going back to our initial point, having the right goals and having the right paradigms. And during those exercise, the aim that we had was to eradicate food insecurity, make sure that everyone would have sufficient nutritious food. But it turns out that you need literally a city, and even beyond the city, you need a whole state to make it happen, because you have different organizations and institutions and people intervening there.
It really sounds like a complex system, much like all of those conversations we've had among the network. It's like, and it in a way it kind of resonates, because I understand what you mean when you say, okay, we really have to be careful on when we're setting goals. It means, from my perspective, it also means, okay, making sure that your goals are holistic, but there is an aspect of trade-off for me from what I read was there some level of a trade-off when you're focusing on food system within a patriarchal society, and it also is where I come from. It is really a patriarchal society still. So how can you ensure that women within that complex system are the one benefiting? That sounds like a great achievement in its way. But I mean, how would I say that? What goal were you able to set? For example, what was the paradigm shift that you're trying to? If I can learn from that.
I think we had a few lessons learned. First of all, if we set the right goal, having food security for everyone, that already requires you to use systems thinking and approach different aspects. Food security means that you need to have economic ability to access to food, but also physical ability. So it's about economic policies to make sure that people have enough resources to access to food, but also that the city offers the right infrastructure to get to that food physically, but also at the same time, from the supply side, you have to make sure that either you produce the city within the city's limits, or you make sure that whatever is produced outside the city limits comes in the right way, and it's offered through either our public markets or anything like that in the right way, making it fair and making it, again, affordable and so on. But also, if you're able to solve all these different points within the system, you also need to put kind of like a safeguard to them, and that's how you start thinking about embedding resilience into a system. So once you solve all these connections, then you can start thinking, how do you ensure that these connections are safe and that they can keep working and operating even if you have disruptions. So it's about it's about really aiming at solving higher goals, and through that you start breaking it down on how to do it, and also understanding that you would go beyond the scale of one single city, because it's a very highly interconnected system, but also that you would need support from and you would need the participation of different actors and organizations and agencies and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, again, it really resonates in the sense that I see that on a day-to-day basis, when you have so many actors and the power relationship between all those actors, the different level, it kind of I don't know how we okay, this is the challenge that I faced. It's like, okay,
yes,
the goal is clearly it's food security. Even from our perspective, it's also food security. So that is understandable. But then you do have different levels. You have many actors. So my understanding is you still need to set goals at the different levels that of your system. I mean, it's not one homogeneous system. You still have policymakers, for example. You still need the normative framework, so there must be some goals on the normative framework, for example. So I mean, how long did it look? It's a long process. How long did it take you to reach the level where you've reached? Have you reached where you wanted to?
We didn't reach the place where we would have wanted to, because if food security was the aim, Quito is still a bit far away from that. But our city's process took at least a couple of decades so far, reaching a level of maturity in the kind of like in the last years, because we were able to put together the agri-food pact of the city, where you would have ministries and the main food producers and the main food distributors of the city, together with small farmers and together with consumer organizations and so on, and agreeing that you need to have, that we want to have, let's say a sustainable and a food secure system. That level of agreement still took us 2 years just to agree on like one sentence. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure from your side this is something similar. You also work with like a set of different organizations, and probably you can also feel the same struggles that we had in terms of power imbalances, like having these really small farmers with the big food distributors of the city in one single table. That in real time you can see how that power imbalance unfolds, and I'm sure you have kind of like the same dynamics.
100%. And for us, there are many different layers of complication, in the sense that we work in marginal areas institutionally, and that because our member states, I mean, based on a mandate provided by the member state. So when we talk about marginal, we're talking about boundaries between two or more countries. So you could imagine, like, we're very, very far from center of decision making. We're talking about, I wouldn't say small scale, but I mean, really, it is more at a community level, household level, most of the time, in terms of agriculture, either livestock and etc. So power imbalances, yes, a lot. You'd still have a lot of for us it's mostly arid, semi-arid land, so there's a lot of pastoral economy, so livestock and etc. And we're talking about extreme climate event also. I mean, we're talking about recurrent drought, failed raining season. We're talking about if it's not drought, it is flash floods, and so another extreme, either too much rain, not enough rain. We're also talking about sometimes now because of a changing climate. We're also talking about pest and transboundary pest invasion. So the desert locust was the latest one. Before that, you had many different pests that came into our agricultural system. So there's nature on one side, and then of course the socioeconomics, the politics, the social aspect of our communities. There's a lot of good that came out of that social aspect, in the sense that there's interlinkages, interdependencies that are really strengthened because of the social fabric that's across the region. Yet, I mean, so that kind of, I don't know how if it's an additional vulnerability to the system, or if it's an additional complexity and additional variable to take into considerations. But yes, I mean, maybe we should continue digging around goal settings and trying to maybe change. Our goal was always food security in pastoral area, and making sure our border communities are resilient to climate shocks. But yes, that has been an undertaking that's been going on since the 70s, and most recently since 2013. So that's almost 15 years into our resilience strategy. I don't know. I feel like the challenge we have is like that kind of piling up. It's like they know how to. Genuine. I don't know. Do you have that feeling that the challenge know how to cooperate, and they cooperate better than we do? COVID on top of climate shocks on top of it. I feel like all of those shocks and stresses cooperate better than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, well, all those shocks and stresses are more robust and more resilient systems than we are. Absolutely, and there is also kind of like a power imbalance in that sense. But I was really curious. How do you navigate? How do you, like, you describe your governance systems, and then how do you navigate the difficulties of having all these different actors with different levels of power in your like in the region where you work?
Well, it's a lot of dialogue. I feel like we spend a lot of time talking, and specifically to make sure that everybody understands it and is at the same. So that's probably part of what you call goal setting, and even for us, it's also the same thing. Like, you make sure that everybody is at the same level of understanding and the same level basically on the same trajectory. Like, you kind of align in the discourses and understand that what's good for you, it's also good for me. So I mean, it's through dialogue. It is And funny enough, like, you would think there is a lot of inaction in dialogue, but no, I mean, it kind of saves, what do you call it? It kind of helps into strengthening the system, and the basis and the foundation of our system would be, okay, all right, so at least that step is secure. We're not coming back into it because, I mean, we agreed on that, and then we can only move from there. There is, you see what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah,
So,
I think you're making sense. Basically, you're saying that once you agree on a common ground, you can never, you should not go back. But then you are putting on the table a very important point, which is access to information and the amount of information that parties have that already establishes a power imbalance, right? If you go there
yes,
with a lot more information than the counterpart, you already have an advantage.
correct. That's how. I mean, go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say, then making sure that everyone arrives there with at least the same level of information, which is not an easy thing to do, would be kind of like, it's basically a necessity. It's kind of like a must.
Absolutely. That's why it's important. I mean, the person, the institution you choose as middle ground, as broker, if you put it this way, as facilitator for this conversation, must be somebody like impartiality shouldn't be questioned. For example, I said, okay, these people are hiding information. They are siding with this. You see what I mean? Like there
Yep.
must be a certain level of impartiality that is required when you're trying to create that common ground, common understanding.
Correct.
And and my goodness, for a very long time, I mean, that's saying, yeah, information is power. But I think things have changed, specifically because of social media, because of, I mean, technology, innovation. I believe information is almost everywhere. So you're trying to make sense of what would be most relevant, especially in a goal setting, in a common understanding process. I don't know. Sometimes you find yourself fighting against alternative facts and fake news. So I said, okay, no, that is not true.
Yeah.
Science.
And in relation to that, if whoever is moderating the whole process is basically part of the system, and this person or this organization needs to understand that, which basically means making sure that everyone agrees that there is impartiality from whoever is supporting the management of the system is critical. But also the role of this, or of whoever is there, in terms of making sure that there are no power imbalances, that everyone has access, the same level of access to information on the things that are being discussed, that you are able to bring to the table voices that are usually neglected or not heard, becomes critical. So the process, that whoever is helping manage the process, has to make sure that all of these things are considered, which kind of like brings us back to one of the initial points of these conversations. Why would you want to intervene in a system? What do you want to achieve? What are the right goals? And then also, what paradigms are behind those efforts?
Absolutely. I mean, there's many different examples of. I don't know. I mean, we can all. It's funny how we document failures more than we document successes, and why I'm saying that is that there was a series of program that were set up some time ago, and you would see the remnants of especially if you do a lot of field work in some of our areas, you would see a remnants of a board, that says, okay, there was a program on agriculture, water resources that was here, and then you look around and you still don't see it. I mean, and you just wonder what happened. Like, things have broken down and have not been repaired, and etc. So that's probably because, many different reasons for that. I'm sure you've seen it also, some of those development projects that are unsustainable. So yes, so goal setting, sustainability of program from the beginning. That hence the paradigm shift that you're talking about. Like, you really need to have that in mind when you're trying to set up your goal. I liked how you said it. It sounds so mouthful and complicated, like sustainable food, resilient food system. And I think there was a notion of justice also in it. There was many different aspects in your program that, it eventually, definitely, it will take time. It will take time to reach that, because it's always what's it called? This type of fast food type of project where it's a quick win must be a three-year program. You can't do anything in 3 years. Really.
Yeah.
If you it takes time to see a system and to establish a sustainable system. It really takes time. So anyhow, I think that's part of the paradigm shift. Is if you really want to change something, we're not talking about 3 years. You must think about long-term vision and have everybody around rally around the same goal and mottos.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I read once, I was reading once a report about the importance of monitoring and understanding whether or not one project would bring the desired change. And it turns out that you need at least 7 years to really get the project implemented, let's say in a standard project, and then run any type of measurements or assessment, and then you come up with the with your results, and then, but for that you need time, and usually that time goes beyond whatever time a project is designed or a policy, or so there is just it doesn't match the times that you really require to do things to change a system, or to understand whether or not you are changing the system in the right way with how currently projects and programs and policies are set up. The time frames are completely different.
Absolutely. And I don't think come to think of it, when you look around, I don't think people around us, our development colleagues, do not know that. They know that. Everybody knows that. I don't understand how we can do it. It's like it's just again, it has to do with that goal, the goal setting, and say, okay, we understand, right? It really is a decision making. Starts with yourself. Says, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, please. Can we know what it takes for a system to be resilient and to be efficient and sustainable and all of that. So, you see, COP 30 is going on. Don't get me started on COP 30, my friend. Beautiful.
If you want to vent a little, this is the space and the time.
That's the purpose of another conversation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Perfectly. That would require then probably a coffee and getting together in person and really
absolutely
having those reflections. I'm sure.
That requires a 3-course meal, my friend. No, it's not going to finish in a 30-minute conversation. No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
For sure.
Yes.
I was while you were saying all of this, and then I was thinking. So there is one additional. There is one notion in complexity science that says that the function of a system, which should be defined by the right goals, but the function of a system is not what you want it, what you say it is, but what it actually does, or what it renders, or what the result is. So let me give you one example. The Ecuadorian constitution in 2008 established that the country should go towards a food system that would bring security and sovereignty, right? I hope I'm saying the right, I'm pronouncing it right.
But of sovereignty, right? Yes.
Right. And the thing is, so you can say, interesting. Then the function of a system and the goal of the system is to kind of like move it towards there. But if you pay attention to what the system, the food system in Ecuador and also the one in Quito is delivering, it doesn't align to what the Constitution says. So we have more food insecurity, we have more insecure people, and of course you have a differentiation between groups if you really break down the data. We are breaking ecosystems. We have large parts of land in the country where you cannot grow anything anymore because the soil is depleted. And on top of that, and in top of that, climate change is causing a lot more struggles. So this is a really great example of how the system, even though you might wanna aspire to have a system with food security, is not about writing it down and even putting it into the constitution of a country, but it's about actually to make sure that the system works towards that goal, which speaks to what we are discussing right now. Making sure that everyone has access to food in one way or another, but that all the policies are aligned with the objective of having food security with sovereignty. And
I understand. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to a larger extent, we could make exactly the same reflection in terms of the SDGs, for example. But let us not go there.
Okay, 5-course meal. Now, when we, it's funny you talk about sovereignty because, I'm sure you remember years ago, and the Constitution of Ecuador was set in 2008, yes?
That one, yes.
Yes. I understand why back then it was about sovereignty. Because, I mean, really, the big buzzwords back, and it was around I'm sure you remember the food crisis, and I mean, the prices of wheat and bread and etc. I mean, we had Arab Spring, we have whole financial crisis and etc. that came out, that kind of gave birth to that notion of sovereignty. Same, we didn't put in our constitution, but it was exactly the same narrative. You know, we must be there must be some level of food sovereignty. And then eventually that notion just kind of fizzled down. I didn't hear about it for quite some time. Now what we hear about is resilience food system. What we hear about is sustainable food system. But that food sovereignty came back. COP16 for UNCCD was last year, I think. COP15 was in 2022. So at COP 2022 for UNCCD, the notion of sovereignty came back, and then they kind of coupled it with local food system. I'm sure you've seen that. There's a whole communique that came out that says, I'm going to think of how we see how the global markets are kind of crashing, this and that. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, of course, for the purpose of our conversation. But yes, so kind of come down to local food system and say that we must have that. But now, how do you define? And this brings us to a part of our conversation we started with, the scale. How do you bring it down? I mean, what is local? How do you define local? And the localization of, I'm sure you've seen that localization of aid, localization of development. That was a whole buzz around 2021, 2022.
Yeah. And I think that's a great question, and probably one of the reasons we are part of ASRA, because at the end of the day, everything is interconnected, and you have different skills, right? So turns out that today, as we speak, we cannot have food security and sovereignty if we destroy the Amazonian rainforest, for example. 80% of that rainforest is in Brazil, and the reason for that is because most of the water, like a lot of water, is condensed. It's
Yeah.
evapotranspirated through the trees in that jungle, and then you have kind of like a huge river on top of the jungle that flows in the opposite direction of to the Amazon River to the Andes, and then that water vapor becomes water and then ice, and then that's more or less how we kind of like, I'm simplifying the process, right? But then that's how we get the glaciers, and then that's how we get the water in the highlands, and that water then later on brings water um, to our energy systems and food systems and so on. So, so it's a very nice aspiration, but again, we depend on others, ourselves, but also on others.
Exactly. That's the thing, and 100%. I mean, I agree with you. That localization, what the system you've described around the Amazon, it is a local system, but that local system contributes to another local system. Do you see? So that interconnectedness, that's exactly what I was trying to say when you see, okay, but what you call local, at which point you stop being local? Everything is local, but that local, one way or another, connect to another local system. So anyhow, it's kind of that complexity and in systemic risk that is sometimes you just wonder, you pause and wonder, okay, if everything is so interconnected, how would I know that what I'm doing is actually towards the right towards, I mean, will yield a positive outcome for the system, and not kind of, you see what I mean, not kind of tilt or kind of bring break the system, one way or another.
Yeah.
You see that? I don't know.
And that's a tough question, because sometimes you have trade-offs, right? Even if you like go ahead and steer the system, or like if you do something with the system, there might be trade-offs, and we have to be aware of that, because that's a feature of a complex system. So we have to be aware and we have to pay attention. But then I was thinking about the 10 principles, ASRA's 10 principles. That kind of like allows to have a right guidance on how to proceed, and like what to look at. But again, and still, there are always going to be trade-offs, and we have to be aware of that. And managing those trade-offs is part of the job.
For sure. I'm kind of excited to be that you have steer the tool to.
Yep.
I've not used it. I don't even know where to start. But I'm excited in a way that as in I'm hoping it will help us, get better answers maybe. But I don't know. I'm always dreaming of this. It's called in French, arbre décisionnel, like a tree that kind of allows you to a kind of an organogram. So if this doesn't work, then you can try this, and if this doesn't work, then you can try this, and etc. So that is, I'm hoping, I'm dreaming that will help, will yield that result. But I'm quite looking forward to use steer. The tool of the network in kind of defining what the trade-off be in the systems that I mean, where I work, it's really in liminalities of many different things. I mean, we've spoken about climate risks. That's now environmental. You also told me about how this is socio-ecological impact of how the Amazon, I mean, depleting the Amazon forest.
Yeah.
But there's also, I'm sure it also has a cultural aspect, a political, highly political for sure, but also a cultural aspect, because I mean, I remember, and he was very, what was that gentleman, the chef, Raoni, I forgot his name, that was in Rio, the first, the COP, I think, was it COP Rio or the UN system? I years ago, 1992, I think. So yes, all of that. So it's kind of I don't know, and I also, in a way, I'm also hoping for better co-productions between practitioners and communities. For example, I find we talked about that we actually started with it. Our conversation is that the technocrats that we are, those of us who know many different theories of I always say there's a theory about everything.
Yeah.
And then those who live through those challenges. So I mean, I don't know.
So as you were talking about the steer tool, ASRA's steer tool, I was thinking that it is a very useful one. I used in a similar manner to understand. I used something similar to understand the food system of Quito. But what's interesting is that not only you can map how resources flow, for example, you can also understand and map things that you do not necessarily can that are not physical, let's say, but that will have an influence in the system. For example, going back to the notion of power imbalances, who has more influence in a system than a different counterpart? With what aim or for what? I mean, you can already map those things out, make it part of your analysis, and kind of like help you develop a strategy, because you definitely need to consider those ingredients, those components when you understand the system.
100%. I mean, it's amazing that it's kind of defines for, it allows for you to see all these different. From my understanding, that all the different actors, even those that you wouldn't initially think about or consider, and then so it highlights those, like, some hidden values or variables of the system, but it also kind of highlights levels. Like, for example, for your own agency, like, okay, what can I do to make sure that so and so, or this actor or that actor, how can we make sure that there's a positive? I understand it. That's awesome. That's really good. See how excited I get when you talk about tools and I missed that. I became an administrator. I enjoy my work, but I miss the research aspect of the work.
You don't get me started, because I also really like my work. But if there is something that I miss from my previous life in Quito, implementing the resilience strategy, was going on the ground, working with communities, working with neighborhood leaders, sitting down, having conversations with them, and basically coming up with plans for their development and for their own security and for their own well-being, but plans that would come from them. So those are the type of things that I really miss from my previous work.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Can imagine.
It,
But now, go ahead, my friend.
no,
I was about to
no,
tell you
please.
about how my work it used to take me. It still takes me in. Working across scales. Remember, we talked about the system and how our ecological system would now cross many different boundaries. So you can imagine, like, we're talking about two different political systems. We're talking about many countries among themselves, so etc. It's exciting in a way. I mean, I look forward to hosting you so that you get to see from this part of the world how a movement of people from across a country kind of influences the policies of one of our member states, for example. You know, we deal with a lot with pastoral mobilities and people who move with their cattle and with their livestock. And it does require it kind of require a lot from a country in terms of finances and resources, not only natural resources but also, you know, health and social services and etc. to also accommodate the influx of pastoral communities. So yeah. It's
And
it
they all
really
to
is a
be.
beautiful.
And I was just going to say they all need to be properly aligned, otherwise, uh, yeah, sometimes the efforts are futile. But you're going to say it is beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Because you see, that's the beautiful aspect of it is that it's a negotiated agreement among the member states themselves to say, okay, fine, I understand and I'll take care of it. You know.
Yes, yes.
They are welcomed. You see, it's really amazing. It's amazing as it is.
Yeah. Along those lines, I remember at the beginning in Quito when we were connecting with neighborhood leaders. Our aim was to go and develop a resilient strategy per neighborhood on the ground, and then we, of course, we had a team of the municipality of Quito had a team of people that would run all the participatory processes. The city of Quito has its own participatory system or its own participatory mechanism. So you have people that actually know how to run those processes. And one of the things that they told us was, if you go to a neighborhood, even though we all speak Spanish, right? If you go to a neighborhood and you say, we wanna design a resilient strategy with you, the community is going to say, yeah, well, I'm really not interested because, first of all, I have other types of interest, and the language that you're speaking is just not something that I'm really picking up. If you change the language and you say,
Yes.
let's come up with a plan where we all are going to be taking care of each other to make sure that we have everything that we need, to make sure that we collaborate, to make sure that we coordinate with the municipality of Quito or with other communities and so on, then you have first of all, you have the right language, you are setting up the right goal, and you would immediately have a better buy-in from communities.
Yes. Absolutely, 100%. I also resonate with that. It's exactly the same thing. You need to frame it in what speaks to them. What is resilience is a buzzword. It is something that, you know, speaks to the rest of us technocrat. But at community level, what does it mean? So yes, it really does. I understand. Yeah. It's amazing how. I mean, I think, well, probably something that we should work on is voices from South America and East Africa, where we hear what our community, what resilience mean for them, and being able to document that. I think that's something that we can, yeah, bring more to light. It's true.
Are you are
Yeah.
you are you are you already putting on the table something that we can do together in the future? Is this what you're trying to do?
Yes, I've counted already 5 of things. That was one one of many things that I think we can pull out of this conversation. I think there's a lot of similarities and I mean different ecological system, but still even maybe
Yep.
different societies. But yeah.
Yeah. And the along those lines, um, if there are two one or two learnings that I have is that when you have the right processes on the ground with communities, you
Mm.
can really create positive change, and it really works. Starting to work higher up in a hierarchy, for example, makes things a little bit more difficult because of the things that we've been saying. Uh, Therefore, I do think, and I'm a true believer of working with communities, with participatory processes, and then bringing change from um, the bottom up. And you can really see kind of like in real time how you change people's lives, how you bring well-being, how you create how you create these connections that are meaningful.
Exactly. Yeah.
How I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine, and she was the person who used to run the urban farming program in Quito, and she was telling me we were kind of like assessing um, what was the role of the levels of trust within the community in our response to the COVID-19, and she was telling me that when she was asking those questions, like, do you trust your neighbor, I'm sorry, or do you trust the colleagues from the municipality of Quito that would help you with the urban farming processes, they would say yes. And those connections were critical for us to have a better response against COVID, to support our own families, but also to support others. And
Yes.
in her words, it was really touching how how when you run these processes in the right way, how you can really create these amazing communities that are close knit and really functional.
Absolutely. It's really powerful conclusion right there. Like you do have a great amount of trust among neighbors and among communities. For you, it's probably the next door neighbor, but from our perspective, it also the neighbor across the border that really bear the same challenges as than we do, and then the same challenges we go through in life. Yes, it is. It's a really great, powerful conclusion. It has been a great conversation, my friend. I really appreciated it. I don't know. What do
Me
we?
too.
What
Me
do
too.
we? Yes. What do we? What are our takeaways? Voices from South America and East Africa. Yes.
For sure.
Um,
I Is it my internet connection or yours? Because I'm getting a message that one of the two sites is having difficulties. Is your internet good?
I think it's fine. Probably it might be yours. Do you want to?
Okay.
Do you want to
Yeah,
check?
maybe might be from it's
Maybe from my
right
side.
now it's better, but
Okay.
yep. Yes. Um I was yeah one before we jump into, or maybe I could also put it as a takeaway.
Hmm.
Um Trust is also in using complex systems language. Trust is something that can be accumulated and that you want to have, right?
Hmm.
And so if we work to manage
Hmm.
our own human systems, um, but also with other non-human life forms, where we have,
Hmm.
where possible, where we have levels of trust, and that is something that we want to build, and that we want to like uh, have a good bank account, let's of trust. That would be kind of like a nice way to operate, understanding that that can help you go and set the right goals, um, change the paradigms, and hopefully change the system one connection at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, that also brings the work we do across scales, from local system to I mean, regional and global, which is basically a sum or a function of different local systems, and how can we better uh, evaluate those feedback, that and better analysis of the feedback loop across power structures and across scales. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think there's a lot more to say. There's a
absolutely.
lot more to say. Yes, and we also have a
Yeah,
five meal course where we'll discuss a bit more about all of the other
yeah,
aspects.
yeah, absolutely. Mm, Maybe one last thing along those lines. Power
Yes, Matthew.
imbalances are a feature of 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 any existing system, but you can always change the rules,
Yes,
and you can always level the
exactly.
table, and that's what we should
Yes.
be doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's always a way. I mean, the agency might differ, and there's always a way to treat those power imbalances, and tip the scale, tip the table, or whichever way you look at it. Yes, and
Yeah,
trade-offs might not be bad. I realize trade-offs are sometimes
we have to be aware that there are going to be trade-offs and that they have to be
yeah,
handled or managed, whether if
exactly,
they are good or not. But there will be, because they're highly interconnected systems, right?
exactly, absolutely. Thank you. Because I enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. It's like I did.
Of course, I had a great time. Yeah.
Thank you so
So
much, Matthew. Have a
through the
beautiful
whole
day.
thing.
Thank you, Matthew. Have a beautiful evening.